In North Miami, Florida, a couple's playful morning results in a fatal shooting.
We were still in the fact-finding stages. We wanted the truth.
We're looking at a suspicious death.
Police turn to Dr. Henry Lee to see if the suspect's story holds water.
The beauty of the forensic evidence, we only can say what the scientific evidence tells us, nothing more.
Pilar MacArthur, wife of a well-known Metro-Dade police detective, had died from a gunshot wound to the head. Her husband, Ted, claimed it was a tragic accident, but the police weren't sure they believed him. With the crime scene photos in hand, North Miami police detectives Rick Spots and Don Slovanik returned to the MacArthur home with Dr. Lee to reconstruct what they found the day of the shooting. Dr. Lee knew immediately that the volume and location of Pilar's blood would be critical in unraveling the circumstances surrounding her death. Not only had Ted MacArthur just purchased a new life insurance policy on his wife, but he had been openly introducing his mistress around town. The woman, a Miami Herald reporter, moved in with Ted and his two sons while the investigation continued. With their assistant standing in for Pilar, Dr. Lee and Robert O'Brien reconstruct the shooting, starting with Ted MacArthur's version of it.
According to his statement, he walked in with a water pistol, tried to wake her up, squirt some water. According to him, she shot herself. She's right-handed, so the weapon, let's try it out, whether or not you can do that. The entrance wound, left side, right above. Does the right angle has to be like this. Can you fire the shot? Can you
No, I cannot pull the trigger.
You cannot pull the trigger.
The crime scene reconstruction suggested that the victim had not shot herself accidentally, as Ted MacArthur alleged. And there were other inconsistencies in his story, like his claim that he had moved his wife to the floor a minute or two after the shot was fired. With a major head wound, there should be a trail of blood drops from where she was shot on the bed to where she was moved to the floor, but none were found, which indicated she had been moved after the wound began to clot.
And drop the body this way.
To prove his hypothesis that Pilar's body had been moved well after the time given by Ted MacArthur, Dr. Lee needed to determine the amount of blood that was on the sheet. First, he cut clean 1-inch squares of the sheet. Then, the same size squares with Pilar's dried blood on them. After weighing both pieces, he used a mathematical formula to determine the approximate amount of blood that was on the sheet from the head injury. The figure he arrived at was more than 1,000 cc's, or about 1/3 of all the blood in Pilar's body. The next step in establishing the timeline meant performing an experiment Dr. Lee had never tried before, and it required 1,000 cc's of fresh human blood. Using his own blood for the coagulation experiment, Dr. Lee poured it to match the pattern in the crime scene photos. The results? It took between 15 and 25 minutes for the blood to coagulate and begin to separate. Plenty of time to clean up a crime scene before making a 911 call. Dr. Lee decides to perform one final experiment. To find out how much blowback or gunshot residue there is in a contact gunshot to the head, Dr. Lee used a dummy with pigskin wrapped around the head to simulate human skin and fired one round from a .357 Magnum pistol like the one that killed Pilar MacArthur. The results are incontrovertible. Fired at point-blank range, the shot produced gunshot residue and blowback, which were missing at the crime scene. They were getting closer to the truth.
With other trace evidence, such as gunshot residue, blood spatter evidence, hair, nothing on the gun barrel, no fingerprint, no blowback, those trace evidence tell us a complete story. We know Sergeant MacArthur's alibi is incorrect.
Nearly 2 years of hard work was finally about to pay off. A grand jury charged police detective Ted MacArthur with first-degree murder. After the jury filed back into the courtroom, Judge Thomas Spencer pronounced the verdict: guilty of first-degree murder.
Without the photograph and the documentation, we were never able to find out the blood will coagulate. we will never find the answer. The police detective did an excellent job to record the crime scene through the photography. This provides me all the information data so I can reconstruct and pieces together this case. The beauty of the forensic evidence, we only can say what the scientific evidence tells us, nothing more.